Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood. A season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. Be sure to join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. This week, I am joined by Andy Hill, also known as Marriage, Kids, and Money. Andy Hill is the award-winning family finance coach behind Marriage, Kids, and Money, a platform dedicated to helping young families build wealth and happiness. His advice and personal finance experience has been featured on major media outlets like CNBC, Forbes, MarketWatch, Kiplinger's Personal Finance, and NBC News, with millions of podcast downloads and video views. Andy's message of family financial empowerment has resonated with listeners, readers, and viewers across the world. And when he's not talking money, he enjoys being a soccer dad, singing karaoke with his wife, and watching Marvel movies. I love it. Welcome to the podcast, Andy.
Thank you, Steven. I appreciate it. I'm going to carry you around wherever I go and just be my hype guy. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Hey, I'm pretty cheap. It doesn't take much. I'm down. No, I love just the fact that I found you by just being on Instagram. I didn't have any friends that were like, "Oh, you got to check this guy out. You got to do this thing." I was just on Instagram and scrolling, and I kept coming across your content. Sent you a DM, and here we are. And so I just love what you do.
Thanks, man. The power of the internet. I love it. Yeah, you put out some goofy videos and make some weird faces, and then you make new friends. It's a great thing.
How did you get into the space of personal finance, family finances? How did you even get there?
Yeah, about 6 years ago now, I had a really bad day at work. It was one of those days where management completely changed what team I was on without talking to me. The people that I had built up on my team were not on my team anymore. It was like the world was flipped upside down. I had done all this hard work, and I realized that I really had no control of my life. And I'm like, I need something outside of my job, as like something to do, some sort of hobby. Because when I would come home from my job, I loved my small kids, but they were all encompassing. I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So if it wasn't work all day, it was parenting all night. So I needed something else. So I was interested in personal finance and listening to podcasts and things like that. So I said, hey, why don't I start one? I'm going to start one and, have some conversations with some really smart people I can learn from, and then just share our journey along the way as we're trying to build wealth and happiness in our family. And 6 years later, it went from a hobby to a full-time job, and that's what I'm doing now for my full-time business as a stay-at-home dad / entrepreneur guy.
I love it. I I resonate though, because I've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-month-old or a 5-month-old.
Oh, so there you go. You got a stacked house there. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're in the midst of it, but no, that's so great. I feel like, everybody's path, kind of comes through finances in some way. For you, it's become, a career, that you get to build around, but everybody's thinking about it. Everybody is dealing with it, no matter if they are good at it or not. They are dealing with finances. And so I think it's such an important topic. And, our audience is young adults. It's a lot of 20-year-olds, 20 to 30-year-olds beginning their careers, leaving college. And I think just these big questions hover over us. So what was that journey like for you guys? As a young family, you were interested in personal finances, but did you ever have a point where you're like, we got to get serious about this? We got to rethink this?
Yeah, so I met my wife in our mid-20s. I think we were both 26, and I was living in Michigan, and she was living in California. I had been in contact with one of my friends who's like, "You got to come out to LA and visit me. You got to come out to LA." And I didn't have any money. I was like making maybe $30,000 a year doing stuff. So any money, extra money I had, I was just trying to eat and, go out with my friends and things like
Right.
that. So, but I kept on going on Facebook. Facebook was popular around that time. And I was looking at pictures of my friend and her roommates, and they're having fun. And I'm like, well, actually, her roommate's pretty cute. Maybe I should go out there. So I'm like, okay. I started chatting with her on Facebook, and then we started chatting on the phone. And then it turned into, okay, I'm going to come out there. I found the cheapest Spirit Airlines flight from Detroit to LA. I think it was nasty on the way out there, and then it was a red eye on the way back. And the first weekend I went out there, I absolutely fell in love with her, and we just had an absolute great time together. Fast forward 9 months later, she's moving back to Michigan, where she's originally from. We get engaged. We're married a year later, and we're just having the time of our lives. And ever since then, it was like, hey, any money that came into our lives for that period of time, we were like, hey, what can we do to just enjoy our lives and have a great time in our 20s and make some memories? And then it was right at the moment when we found out we were going to be parents that light bulb switched. It was like,
Wow.
oh, we're not just living for today. We're not just living for us. We are bringing a human into this world. And that was when things changed for me, at least. I was saying, okay, we've racked up quite a bit of debt. We've got some student loans. We've got some home equity line of credit that I was using to travel back and forth to go see my girlfriend. I even bought her engagement ring with a portion of my student loans. It was just like, it was all over the place. I was borrowing and borrowing and borrowing just to live the life that I wanted to have. And it was that moment that I learned I was going to be a dad. I said, okay, well, what can I do to fix the situation? And that's where things started to change for us financially. We went from negative $50,000 worth net worth at that point. So our assets minus our liabilities, all the stuff we owned minus all the stuff we owed, was negative $50,000. So we were in the hole. And at that point, we said, okay, we got to make some changes. So we partnered together and did some fun things.
Wow. That's inspiring though. Was there what kind of helped you guys along the way? Because now obviously you found purpose in that very place and your calling or whatever you call it. But who helped you along the way, or what was kind of your guys' journey like in that?
Yeah, so at that point, we just sort of reassessed things and said, wow, we're in the hole, and we've got our daughter on the way. What can we do to become, to clean up this mess before she comes into the world? And at the time, I had been starting to listen to TV shows and books and things. I'm reading books on personal finance because I was starting to get interested. I found Dave Ramsey. I found Susie Orman. I found some, the Rich Dad series, all those things.
Yep.
I was just starting to digest all these things that were inspiring to me. And one thing that I grabbed onto was, okay, we've got all this debt that I accumulated from, student loans and the home equity line of credit. My wife had a car loan. I'm like, okay, now that we're combining our income together, we are making over $100,000 together. Separately, we were less than that, but now we've got this money together. We're living in the same house. What can we do to maybe live on kind of what we used to live on individually, and then use the rest to build our wealth or pay off our debt or do things that will help us in the long run? They might not be as fun today as going out, with partying and everything like that, but what can we do to maintain some of that fun and happiness, but also build wealth for tomorrow? And so we made a commitment together that we would try to eliminate our $50,000 of debt as soon as possible. And by living on half, or essentially living on one of our incomes, we were able to do that. We paid off that $50,000 of debt in 1 year. And we did that by partnering together. We had some conversations every month. We looked at our goals. We made some progress. We stopped spending on things that we didn't need to. And by the time my wife was pregnant, we weren't going out as much anymore. Things that were once enticing weren't so enticing anymore once you're, waiting for your baby to come into the world. And so we made some family-centric changes that were very helpful for us. So we became debt-free in about a year. And then we started investing for our future, for both our daughter and our future retirement. And it's made a lot of difference in our financial trajectory for sure.
Awesome. I feel like that kind of just sets the stage for this conversation. I think, some of the things that I've been talking to people about is kind of, where do we start? I think there's a lot of people that are maybe even at that place that are newly married or looking to get married. And I think some of those decisions that we make and that people make in those early stages really set set the table for the future. And it's kind of funny. I was talking to a friend, just kind of gearing up for this conversation. I just said, what questions would you ask? And she said, well, our situation is we're married and we have about $50,000 worth of debt. And we're just trying to figure out like what to do next. Yeah. And so I think it's funny that was your number as well. But what's kind of, your advice to somebody that's maybe in that place that they've kind of come to this realization that this conversation is attractive to them because they're like, oh, finances, I need help in this. Yeah. What's kind of the starter advice? I'm out of college, trying to figure out what to do now.
Yeah, I would say the first and easiest thing for us to do, because it can be intimidating. You go on financial news, you see investing in stocks and all this stuff. It's like, where do I start? I think the easiest thing for people to do, and it was the easiest and best thing that we did, was physically write down the money that's coming in and where it's going. That type of information, what we call a budget, is so revealing that says, okay, am I spending money in accordance with my values or the things that I deem as our family values? Or are we putting it towards things that don't really matter? Am I putting my money towards the things that matter? Am I prioritizing giving? We say giving is important for us, but am I prioritizing that? We say that time together as a couple is important, but are we prioritizing that in our budget? Are we talk about our children and the future that they have? Are we prioritizing that? Or are we spending money on things that don't really matter? So I think writing down a budget, you can do this with a piece of paper and a pencil right now, or you can use an Excel spreadsheet, or you can use one of these fancy fintech apps like Mint or YNAB that just makes the process super easy. But that was the first thing that Nicole and I did together as a couple that helped us to get a baseline of what's coming in, how much we're making, and then where the heck is it going, And then when you have control of where it's going, you can be in charge of your future. You can be in charge of where the money is going and the type of life that you want to have. So the first things first is just to write down where that money's going. It's like our schedules, We wouldn't go through the day and just be like, oh, well, we'll see what happens today. We have a calendar and we know where we're going to going. I know at 12:45 Central Time, I'm going to be having a conversation with Steven today. I wouldn't just like pace around and be like, oh, I'm going to jump on Zoom at some point. No, you have a schedule. You know where you're going to be. And it's the same thing with your budget. It's like make a plan, say this is what I'm going to do with the money, and then wow, look up in a year or 10 years from now, and the progress that you have made would be incredible. We started at negative $50,000 when we got married in 2010. 10 years later, we were millionaires. We just focused. We paid off our debt. We eliminated all of it. We invested a lot and just kept doing it.
Wow. Do you remember when you guys first started that? Do you remember there being any big red flags or yellow flags when you first wrote out your budget?
Well, I think the first couple of things that were, not part of the plan were me thinking that my wife and I were on the exact same financial page, being like, okay, well, here's what I think is a great idea, Nicole. And then she'd be like, well, I don't agree with that. I'm like, well, I've read some books and these books say this and they're smart. So therefore I'm smart. And what you're saying is not smart. Oh, that doesn't work, Steven. No, the reality of what I've discovered with marriage is that you come together and you have two different backgrounds and two different lives and sometimes, very, very often, two different opinions. And those are great things. And initially, my first reaction was of frustration. Oh, we're not agreeing. Oh, this isn't, we're not on the same page with this. This is no good. But I think over time, what I've learned is those differences, at least in my relationship, those are benefits. It gives me a different perspective, a different point of view to see, okay, you know what? Maybe we don't need to go so crazy and pay off this debt as fast as that. Maybe we still need to be dedicating some time for us to have some fun and date nights and important things like that. My wife is a good reminder for me for that. So I think if there are, I guess the lesson, what I'm trying to share is that if there are differences or maybe money fights or arguments in the beginning, I think those can be learning lessons. And I think as good spouses or good partners, we can go into those conversations with an empathetic heart and realize that we have two ears and one mouth and try to understand where your partner's coming from. Because I think that type of empathy can go a long way as you're starting your relationship and your marriage.
That's so good. I feel like, just that first step of writing it down, I think for me at different stages, I've almost delayed that step because I knew the slap that I was going to get,
Oh, yeah.
from it. And it's funny, I recently went through a job shift with my full-time employment, and, that obviously comes with some minor adjustments and changes. And so we hadn't had like the strictest written down. We kind of knew the areas we thought we were in and the ballpark. And we started doing the written budget again. And we're like, whoa, I didn't realize how that habit doesn't feel like we're spenders in that area. But I think it's that idea of just seeing it until you see it, until you like actually pull it up, look at it. I don't think we realize our habits until we kind of get them in front of us. So that's a great first step. What would your advice be to the person that maybe is feeling that fear, is feeling that kind of like, but what if I don't like what I see? And it's going to make me change.
Yeah, I think we have all heard that saying about the ostrich, right? Sticking your head in the sand. I don't think that works for a long period of time. So you got to rip the Band-Aid. You got to do the uncomfortable thing. You got to try and take a look at it and take it in steps. And then once you have that moment where you're seeing it all laid out, just know that it comes with a great bit of clarity about your life, being like, okay, this is the direction I'm headed in now. And if you don't like it, if you take a look at it, you're like, oh, that is not the direction I want to be in. The great news is you get to craft where you want to go. You get to craft and say, this is my current plan. This is where I want to go. And the budget helps you to do that. It helps you to say, this is where my money's going right now. I want to change that. I want it to be going in a different direction because this fits with where I want to go. So I take it, it's like grabbing the driver's wheel, just grabbing the steering wheel and saying, I'm in charge now. I want to be in charge instead of just letting the money happen to me.
That's so good. I think of like a map, you kind of, before you get to, you might pick a destination, but you need to know where you're at. You need to know, otherwise you just start walking and maybe you get there, maybe you don't. But I think you also mentioned just the values based on that. And I think, having a spouse is one incredible thing. You have somebody to bounce it off, but even just friends, if you're not married, like I think having those friends around you that you can chat with and say, here's the reality, like one or two close friends that can see it as it is and help you kind of make those decisions. But I know for us, we were in kind of like we had about $25,000 of student debt. I was a campus missionary. We didn't make a ton of money at the time, but we started to get serious about this. But also at the same time, we're also in a window before kids. And to us, there was a value in, all right, we're not going to do anything extravagant, but we need a couple of getaways. We did a road trip out to Seattle. We didn't stay at luxury hotels. We camped along the way at free places, but it was those memories and those things that have really built a solid foundation. But it wasn't at the expense of just burning all of our money just for a good time. I think there's that both. Like we both value financial stability long term, and we also value like building a foundation in our marriage. So I think that's really good. With kind of this stage of life being new jobs, I remember even I didn't make a ton of money out of college, but even going from my 15, 20 hour a week job and then getting that first paycheck was like, whoa. What's your advice like when that shift kind of takes place? And maybe it's not as drastic, but a lot of young adults are seeing more in their paychecks than they did 2 years ago. What's some advice that you would give to somebody that's kind of in that place? Here's what you should do and focus on now.
Absolutely. I think that is a pivotal moment in time. I remember feeling like I'm barely scraping by, making the amount that I'm making and paying my mortgage and, just having enough for the bills and going out with friends and being like, well, I can't even imagine investing or saving or even giving more than I currently do. And then there's that moment where you do start to make some more money. And that is a pivotal moment because man, does the lifestyle creep come in at that point, because all those things that you think you've been waiting on, like improving the car, improving the house, improving your clothing, this is a moment where you can say, okay, yes, it's important to, enjoy things, but how am I supplementing those values that I have? How am I moving towards those things that I said, okay, these are the important things that matter in my life? And am I funding my time and am I funding my money towards those things? Or am I being pushed away from those things for a more consumeristic lifestyle? And there's nothing wrong with improving your situation, improving where you live, improving your car, improving your clothes, things like that. But to an extent, I think we all have to put limits on that to say, these types of things, these types of tangible things aren't going to bring me the true happiness that I'm seeking. They're going to be momentary blips that will maybe make me happy for a little bit, and then it's going to fade. What are those things that are going to bring me that wealth and happiness for me, my family, my kids, that are going to be everlasting? And I think if we continue to invest our time and money in those places more so than the consumeristic, tangible things, I think we have a better opportunity for a happier life.
That's awesome. I think there is that, you call it the lifestyle creep. I think you see those bigger numbers and you go, okay, finally I can get out of living with these other three guys, or,
yep.
We can upgrade my, 99 this to a 2015 this. And I think it's those decisions in that period of time that are really, really important. And I don't feel like I nailed that. Like, I think, obviously there's a lot of grace for all those decisions, and, there's never a bad time to start. But, I feel like that was one of those things that if I could do it again, I would have probably not rushed past, all right, let's give it another year. Let's give it another year of living kind of in a similar way. And I think it would have changed things tremendously at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that I feel like we rush towards those things because maybe we see our peers improving their lives, or Instagram. You're both on Instagram, lots of improvement of lives on there, that at least we see. But I think these behind the scenes things, like planning for our retirement, making sure we have, an emergency fund that'll help us get through a nasty recession, building a budget, these little financial wins that are in the background, they're hard to see. So we ignore them. We ignore them because it doesn't look like a nice car or a nice shirt or a nicer house or a nicer apartment or nicer anything. It's a lot easier for us to choose those things that have visual appeal than the values that we want to have in our lives that will give us that comfortable, happy life.
Yeah. What do you feel like some of the mistakes young people, or common mistakes that you see young people making with their money?
Well, I would say starting later in anything, especially with investing, is one of those things that I think people should start as soon as possible, because things like investing work best when you give them time. If you wait until you're 45 to be like, okay, I'm going to start investing for my retirement, you could still make some headway, but man, is it a ton easier when you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s to pack on the decades that you can have with time and compound interest in your investments. There are, if you want to have some fun on a wild Friday night, pull up a compound interest calculator and then just put in the numbers of, if I invest $500 or $200, whatever it is, whatever you can put away for 40 years, what is that going to do to me versus 10 years? It is a massive amount of millions of dollars of difference. So I think when people take advantage of time and compound interest in their 20s, that is a huge mistake that I know a lot of people who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s say, man, if I just only started earlier and just putting some money away, maybe I didn't know all of the answers, but I at least started learning over time, because, man, has it made a big difference in my lifestyle. I would say starting to invest as soon as possible is a major regret of a lot of people who are my age or older, and they wish they did it in their 20s.
Wow. Kind of on top of that, somebody that maybe has that $50,000 in debt, $30,000 in debt, they're in that job. What's your recommendation? I know there's lots of thoughts, and I think every thought has its value, its positives, its negatives, but what's your kind of take on that person that's kind of battling, do I invest now, like knowing the compound interest, or do I pay off debt? What's kind of your take on that?
I would say, depending on your interest rate for that debt, it's going to be very difficult for you to make that much in the stock market anyway. So if you're paying 18% on a credit card that you keep layering on because you want to keep up with that lifestyle, paying that off is going to not only help you to live within your means, but also essentially you're making your investment's making 18%. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Right.
And it's very rare for you to make 18% in the stock market on a consistent basis. You might have a fluke year, but continually you'd be very happy with 9 or 10%. So if your debt that you're paying is anywhere in that higher range of 7% up to 20%, taking care of that first is not only financially advantageous, but it's also easier. You don't have to go through all the barriers of where do I invest, how do I invest, what do I invest in. You're like, just pay off what you have, and you're already doing as well as most investors out there by paying off anything that's call it 7% or above. And then for the lower interest debt, like mortgage debt, or maybe you've got your student loans down well below that. That's a decision that you have to make at that point. I think long-term investing for decades and decades and decades can really help. I've found that clearing the clutter in my brain of worrying about my student loans made me a better investor. I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I was paying, I think it was like 6 or 8% or something like that, 6 to 8%. And I felt better just eliminating that. It didn't stop me from contributing into my workplace 401k and taking care of matches and things like that, free money that you might get from your employer. So I think it's a judgment call. But if you're paying high interest debt, pay that off first before you invest. Just it's easier, and it will help you to start building wealth quicker.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the mental clutter too, like that clutter. And I think, when we started getting serious about our debt, like it did feel like anything is possible too. I feel like that mountain that we felt like we were facing early on, when we started to see that dwindle, and we were still having fun. Like we were finding new ways. We also feel like the habits that we formed in that season of life, even though right now we're kind of in like this pivot of, okay, we need to be more aware of this, area of our life or whatever, but it's not like we're having to cut out an entire part of our lifestyle because it's gotten out of hand or anything. And I think that's because those smart habits kind of formed when we just attacked that one goal. But I think that is something that I'm 31. And so I've just seen, even in the last few years of just kind of looking at this in a different way and looking at retirement, having kids, like you said, that was a kind of a turning point. Okay, college is coming up and all of these different things. So I started looking at it a little bit different. And I think that starting early is such an overlooked thing in that. And so here's kind of a follow-up to that. I feel like a lot of people, they might get a company that does the match. Mm-hmm. And those things. What else? Because I know I was just talking to somebody gearing up for this, and they said, I didn't know. I was just under the assumption that if I did that, I would be good. But realistically, that would run out very quickly after retirement. And so what are some practical things that you recommend?
Yeah, I think a great place to start, like you said, is any free matches that you get with your employer. So that could be a 401k, 403b, any of these 40 whatevers are really helpful depending on where you work. Employers are also starting to match in a health savings account as well. This is saving and investing for your future healthcare needs. And as you've seen from just prices of healthcare stuff in general, it's only going to get more expensive as we get older. So this is essentially setting aside money for your healthcare needs now and in the future. So taking care of those matches are contributing enough to get those matches in your workplace is a great starting point. Anything after that, I would say take advantage of any tax-advantaged accounts. So those are, again, your 401k, the retirement through your employer. And then you can also take a retirement account, which is an individual retirement account. That's an IRA. That's something you could do either in a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. And then the health savings account. These are 3 different avenues for you to save and invest for your future. And maxing those out to the best of your ability is a great way to go. Now, that helps you save for your retirement. And since we need decades and decades to build that enough to provide us an income in retirement, starting early really helps with that. So I think if you're hitting up those areas, you're doing a lot to help yourself get where you need to go. Now, when people talk about investing outside of their retirement, this can be tricky because it all depends on your time horizon. So if you're investing just to invest, that's fine. But having a goal set up there for both your savings and your investing makes a lot of sense. So if you're saying, hey, I'm an investor investing in these stocks or investing in these different things, well, what are you investing for? Is it something within a year? Well, because investing within a year, that could be really tough. As we've seen with the stock market in this current year, if you didn't have a goal that was maybe 10 years or 15 years down the road, investing for 1 year might make more sense to just have it in a savings account because
Right.
The stock market can be volatile. It can be nasty roller coaster, up and down. And if you're not ready for that roller coaster, you might freak out and pull your money out early, and then you only actually experience those losses when you sell it. So if you decided to sell at the bottom of this market, you're in a tough situation. But if you're planning on investing for something 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in the future, that's when investing can really make the magic for you. These shorter term time frames of 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. I don't go in the stock market for that type of stuff because the ability for it to compound and make a big difference is not worth the risk to me for the potential loss that you'd see in the value of your shares. So that's my thoughts.
No, that's good. I think being on social media, I feel like a lot of things that I'm seeing too are kind of these trends. It's whether it's sports betting or,
Yep.
a lot of people are, I feel like, viewing sports betting or these different NFTs, these other things as kind of like, all right, I'm going to put my eggs in this basket. And I think you can see people are benefiting from it. And so you go, wow, okay, this is like the quick scheme. How do you handle that if people are talking about that or questioning that?
I would say if you're going to do that, call it what it is, which is entertainment. It's fun. Have it as fun. Don't count it as an investment. Betting on sports is not an investment. Betting on a digital piece of NFT art, it's speculation. It's guessing that something might go up in value, and it has no proven record that it will actually go up in value. There's nothing wrong with it, but just call it what it is. Call it entertainment. Call it fun, and expect to lose that money. Just like you would go into a casino and you'd say, all right, I've got $100 here. I'm going to expect to lose this. I'm here to have fun. It's not an investment. If I lose this money, I'm just going to realize that I'm here for fun and I spent $100 on fun. That's not my type of fun, but,
Right.
but for some people, I really think that you need to classify it as that. So for me last year, there was a lot of stuff going on with crypto and Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that stuff. It was super interesting to me. I'm like, wow, could this really be something that changes the whole financial landscape? And for me, I said, okay, I'm going to call this fun, and I'm going to put $100 into Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever and just call it fun and see what happens. And I watched the roller coaster of what it was. It went up, it went down, and now it's on this way down slope. And for me, it was just one of those things where it's like, this has not become fun anymore. So I cashed out, and I'm like, I'm done with digital currency as my type of experiment or fun. But I think if we classify it as things as fun, and then also classify investing as something that you stay with for a long period of time, you buy it and you hold it for a long time. Most millionaires are made through ownership of stocks, real estate, and then owning their own businesses. Those three things. So, but they do that by buying them and holding them for a really long time. The speculative market, yeah, you can make money in buying and then just selling it real fast, but man, is that a little more too hectic for me? And I think in the long term, I think the real winners are the people who buy quality things and hold them for a really long time.
I think what you said, calling it what it is, entertainment. I mean, you can go to a baseball game and you spend $60 and you have fun, and I think that is that difference of what's my expectation of this? Like, what am I putting at stake? Is this stressing me out? And I feel like, if that's something, yeah, you have something in your budget, you have some money that you can have fun with. If that's your method of fun, go for it. But yeah, I think the tried and true, I'm just kind of like looking at this kind of from, I feel like a beginner standpoint. And it's like, I feel like the track record, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've read some Dave Ramsey, and I just feel like there's so many voices in this space, but I feel like the ones that have brought the most value are the ones that aren't saying anything that's crazy, whoa, that's new and I got to jump on. It's people that are saying the same things in different ways and are just using their platform to do so. And I think that just shows me a lot of kind of the aim and what's actually happening in the world of finances.
Yeah, and it also it's personally worked for me too, so it's easier for me to say, like, okay, I bought a house almost 10 years ago and the value of it has gone up almost double. Wow, okay, real estate is something to buy and hold for a long period of time. I started investing 10, 12, 15 years ago. The shares that I bought 10, 12, 15 years ago were a lot lower, and now they are a lot higher. Just over time.
Right.
It makes sense, and it continues to grow. And I think an easy way to keep it simple is looking into things like index funds, because you're buying the entire market. So even like an S&P 500 index fund, essentially the S&P 500 is the 500 best companies in the United States. So now, if you own the index fund and then one of those companies falls out of the index because they're not doing that great anymore, you still own the new 500 best. So it saves you a lot of time and thinking, okay, well, I got to make sure, do I buy Apple? Do I buy Peloton? Do I buy this one? It's like, okay, which one's going to keep doing well? You don't have to worry about that. You buy the index, you buy the whole thing. So instead of looking for the needle in the haystack, you just buy the whole haystack, as John Bogle said. So it's easier that way.
Right. What are some other things, when maybe you're sitting down with your employer and they're giving you different options, whether it's risk tolerance or whatever the case is, how would you help somebody that maybe is saying, I have no idea. They're showing me these things and I'm making a decision, but I really don't know. And I wish I could be more specific, but I feel like that's something a lot of employers do is, all right, you can pick your match, or if you're doing a Roth IRA or whatever, what do you want with it? And it's kind of like a shot in the dark for a lot of people. Like, how would you handle those things?
I think if you're in your 20s and you're just starting out, just start off with buying an index fund that takes care of, that encompasses the entire market, because you've got 20, 30, 40 years before you even need that money. And that's a great place to start. And a lot of companies, depending on where you work, make it easier with a target date fund. So a company like Vanguard can give you target date funds that say, okay, I'm going to be retiring in X year, 2045, whatever it is. And so they build a portfolio for you based on your retirement year. So it goes from more aggressive when you're in your 20s to more conservative as you get closer to actually needing the money as income. And it progressively does that for you over time. Now, depending on where you work, there could be some wild fees that are associated with target date funds, and they could be clouded with bad investments. This just does require you to do a little bit more investigation personally and to help you understand what's in there. I would say the best money you can spend is to simply read a few books that help you to understand and make investing simple, because it doesn't need to have a lot of jargon. It doesn't need to have a lot of overcomplication, or just find podcast, YouTube videos of people that you know, like, and trust, as you said, Stephen, that make the process simple, that don't try to talk about the new flashy thing. What are the things that make investing in the stock market easy? What are the things that make buying real estate simple and easy? And those are the paths that I think help most people.
What are some of the books that you'd recommend?
Yeah, well, I'll look at my shelf over here. I got a lot of great ones. J.L. Collins, Simple Path to Wealth. Love that book. He talks about the power of index fund investing and how to keep that really simple and easy. I would say Chris Hogan of Everyday Millionaires. He talks about all of the myths that we know about millionaires and how just simple, easy processes will get you to that million. And the amount of millionaires that are made just by investing in their own 401k at work is staggering. It's a wild percentage. Like 80% of millionaires have gotten there just by investing in their workplace 401k. And then I like Automatic Millionaire by David Bach, because he talks about the power that this stuff is not difficult. It just requires you to put some automation to it. Once you know exactly what you want to do, just put it on autopilot. So you're automatically investing every month, no matter if the market is down, if the market is up. You're buying no matter what, because that's the best way to do it. And over time, you'll look back and be like, wow, I have a lot of money sitting here, and I feel like I didn't even do anything to earn this, but I did. So automating, realizing that there's so many myths around millionaires with Everyday Millionaires, and then just keeping the process simple with index funds, J.L. Collins, Simple Path to Wealth. I think those 3 books would really help you.
Awesome. I'm going to link those in the show notes in the bio. One of the questions that I enjoy asking guests on the podcast is, if you were to give your 22-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be? And obviously it might be in the realm of finances, or this could just be in general.
22-year-old. Let's see. Graduated college, looking for my first. I think that I was very focused on trying to get a job as soon as possible, get an internship, make as much money as possible, that I think I passed up some opportunities to have a little bit more fun with my friends and enjoy life. So I think that while all this wealth building stuff is important, I think that once you set it on autopilot and you decide to do the right things with your time and your money, I think dedicating some time to create memories with your friends, your family, your loved ones, it's the most valuable thing in the world. So don't pass that up.
So good. Do you have any kind of final parting thoughts that you feel like the audience should know?
No, I think we covered a lot today, Stephen. I would say this is a kind of crazy time in the economy and the world, and I think people are maybe feeling a little bit nervous about what's going on. I would say that please know that this is a very natural part of the economy, this recession that we're in, and just like any storm, you prepare for the nasty weather, right? And then eventually the storm passes and there's brighter days ahead. So if you're feeling down about what's going on or the future that has an outlook right now, just know that we've seen this in history and things are going to get better.
Awesome. Hey, I have appreciated your content. I'm going to recommend everybody to give you a follow. I just feel like it's entertaining, but it's also been really informative for me just to see something that's bite-sized. Every reel that you put out, I find, both interesting, entertaining, fun. So just thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for, taking this path, because I think you're helping a lot of people. So where can people find you, Andy, in Marriage, Kids, and Money?
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate you having me on your show, and I love what you're doing here, putting out some great messages for people. If people want to connect with me on Instagram, it's probably a good place to do it, at Marriage, Kids, and Money. You can see me make some goofy reels like Stephen's been enjoying. And if you like reading, you can check me out at marriagekidsandmoney.com. I have a blog there, and then a dedicated YouTube channel and podcast as well, Marriage, Kids, and Money.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for your time, Andy. It was great to have you on. And audience, we're so grateful for you listening, and we'll see you next time on the Going Somewhere podcast.